Hey guys, and welcome to Table Talk Tokyo. So today I have one of my very close friends. I've known him for the past 4 years, largely through SOGO. We've also worked together on a variety of projects. And he now works in the corporate wellness space here in Tokyo. And so I'm excited to have him on today because he has a very interesting story from completely not being involved in fitness to being completely involved in fitness.
My name is Fuchigami. I'm originally from Vancouver, or more specifically, the suburbs of Vancouver, which is Surrey, Vancouver.
Okay.
Second generation Japanese Canadian, which means both of my parents immigrated to Canada.
Okay.
They met there. I was born, I was raised in Canada, and then about 6 years ago, I moved to Tokyo.
Okay.
So I'd say most of my history was influenced by those two countries,
Okay.
Canada and Japan.
Okay.
But in between, I've had some time living in Korea.
Okay.
I studied Chinese, I traveled in China, and I lived for a bit in South America. So there's a lot of influence from a few different countries. Yeah, I like to think of myself as a global citizen.
Okay.
That's kind of a mixture of many different influences.
Okay. Why the move to Japan?
There's a lot tied into
Packed
the
in there?
decision. Yeah. So I'm the first child of four.
Okay.
Within my sort of nuclear family.
Okay.
And I've noticed this pattern among the other sort of second and third generation Japanese or Asian Canadians or Americans, which is the first child tends to have the strongest influence of the culture of their parents.
Okay.
Simply because they've had the most interaction time with them.
Okay.
They usually speak the language more.
Okay.
So I grew up with, I would say, relatively more Japanese influence than my younger brothers.
Okay.
And so I've always been drawn to that culture, the language, the history, more than the rest of my brothers.
Okay.
And I noticed that among my friends as well. It was usually the first child. If any of the siblings moved to Japan or spoke the language, it was the first child,
Okay.
the second generation or third generation. And so I had a very strong interest in the culture, and that manifested in anime. It manifested in J-pop. It manifested in Japanese dramas. Interest in martial arts. So it was always a part of my life, and there's the whole question of identity, which probably you also can identify with as well, which is who am I? What does Japanese Canadian even mean? Because Canadian encompasses Japanese, it encompasses anything. It's a malleable definition. Whereas Japanese tends to have a little bit more of a fixed definition.
Just like American.
So kind of like opposing things. And I grew up with that struggle of, how Japanese am I? How Canadian am I? Am I being true to myself by not learning the language and the culture? What does it mean to live in Japan and work in Japan, and have that experience and be a Japanese Canadian versus someone who's never actually lived and worked there and claims to be a Japanese Canadian in a certain way. So there's just so many questions about identity, and I think it's always been there. I've always wanted to spend some time in Japan in some capacity, but there was an opportunity roughly 6 or 7 years ago. Around 7 years ago, I identified if I don't go to Japan now, I probably will never have the opportunity to do so. I might settle down, do the suburban thing, have a house, kids, and a car at some point, and then it's not as easy to just on a whim go and move into the country and live there. So I decided that was the time, and I moved to Japan without a job. So I was kind of.
Do you have dual citizenship?
No, I don't. So I only have a Canadian passport. But the Japanese government is the way visas are designed. There's a particular class of visa that's for spouses and children of Japanese.
Okay.
So the children of Japanese or people who are within 3 generations of being of a Japanese national can get the same visa as a spouse.
Okay, so you basically moved here and you were covered in terms of a visa.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's another part of this. There's a lot of reasons why I moved to Japan. The identity part was one. Learning the languages was definitely part of that. The other part was that I had sort of identified that there were more economic opportunities in Tokyo than there were in Vancouver.
Okay. This I've never known about. We've never talked about this. You and
I. It was definitely a factor.
Okay.
So just to give you a snapshot, the population of Vancouver is somewhere around 2 to 3 million
Yeah.
people, I think. And Tokyo is anywhere from, depending on how you define it, urban Tokyo is like
massive.
15 to like 30
Yeah.
million. And so just in terms of that scale,
Yeah.
right, there's far more opportunities in Tokyo than
Yeah.
there are in Vancouver. So if I was to think of which city would I be able to get a good job in, Tokyo is a very appealing city, given that I speak some Japanese and it's easy for me to get a visa. So that's one part of it. The other part is that there's a kind of there's a variance between income and cost of living that is pretty pronounced on the West Coast, as you know, from California to Washington State to Vancouver, British Columbia. So that's very apparent for me. It was very apparent for me then, and my friends who work in Vancouver who got really good jobs, they would also complain, like, I have my colleagues in Seattle who are across the border or in Toronto in another province who get paid 30% more, 50% more doing the exact same thing.
Interesting.
And the cost of living is lower.
Okay, interesting.
So there was that, and then there's another layer to it, which is I graduated from university with a degree in marketing, international business with specialization in Chinese. And marketing as a job is a corporate headquarter job. You can do agency work. If you're working in a company in-house, you're basically in the headquarters. They don't really have a lot of good marketing jobs in the satellite offices. And within Canada, most headquarters of multinational companies are in Toronto. They're not in Vancouver, except for certain industries, which didn't really appeal to me that much. But if you're looking at where are the corporate jobs in marketing in the world, in the U.S., obviously there's a lot of cities like New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, etc. But in Asia, it was Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong. If you go to the Australia as well. But of all those cities, which one was that had the greatest opportunity and also that had the greatest affinity to was Tokyo. So for all of those reasons.
So career, income, connection with culture and language and all that.
It was just like a win-win-win kind of thing. And so Tokyo made a lot of sense. For my career, for my sort of personal journey of figuring out who I am. And it seemed like a lot of fun. It's a great, all the cultural things that they've exported in terms of music and art.
The stuff you liked when you were young, like the J-pop.
And I still like. They all kind of originate from here, so it was a no-brainer.
When you came to Japan, what did you do?
Oh, you did ask that.
You arrived here, and then where did you live, or how did you?
So the first couple of months, I actually lived in Hakodate, which is in northern Japan, because my mom was there with my two youngest brothers, and I actually hadn't seen them for a while because they had moved to Japan when I was still in Vancouver, and even when I was in Vancouver, I was moving around different countries. So I spent some time with them, and that's when I started the job search. And I knew I wanted to do marketing, because that's what my education and that's what my skill set was in. And so I used the sort of the network of recruiters. And I was lucky enough to interview with some really big companies. I was just shocked coming into Japan. So I was interviewing with some of the biggest tech companies, biggest fashion magazine companies, and how did I even land an interview with these companies? It didn't make any sense. Coming from Vancouver, we don't even have these offices. These companies don't even have offices there. And I'm getting interviews, which I didn't pass most of them, but I did get interviews with some of the biggest names in the world. And so that was quite an experience. But well,
then how do you, to dive into that, because this is relevant, how is, now being here 6 years, how do you think that's possible? Why is it that in Tokyo that became possible?
Well, language is a big part of it. Because I spoke some degree of Japanese. I mean, obviously less than now, but enough for me to get the interest of the recruiters. And I also had a business background. And business is a very generally applicable business education experience in corporate and business.
And just more specifically, is it because you spoke some degree of Japanese, or is it because you're fluent in English and spoke some degree of Japanese?
For sure. Fluency in English was one of the most sought after skills I guess I had.
With some command of Japanese.
Yes, and it's so interesting because I realized that I'm no more, capable than when I was in Vancouver. I'm simply more valuable because I'm in a different place. That really hit me.
That's what I was kind of getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, you've known me for a little over 4 years, and during that time, you can tell I'm the kind of guy that's always working on random side projects, and I tend to have a lot of initiative in terms of if I have an idea, I'll at least give it a try.
Yeah.
And so that's actually not new. That's been the case from before, and I had built websites that eventually had millions of visitors.
Yeah.
So I made a website called Hack My Study in my final year university, and it was a website that taught students how to study.
Yeah.
Like, what are the fundamentals, like methodologies and skills?
Like study hacking almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or hack. And I kind of timing wise, I was pretty lucky because the word hack associated with self-improvement was kind of just on the precipice of that.
Yes.
So I kind of rode that wave a little bit, and so the website did quite well, and that was sort of a part of my portfolio of things I could show in terms of, it's not just the technical skills, but the initiative, the foresight in terms of trends, those kinds of things. And so language, side projects, which was huge, I think.
Yeah.
And probably there's an element of I'm not bad at interviews, so I think I was able to relay my strengths when we did have interviews. Again, I didn't pass most of them,
but you had them. You got in the door.
Yeah,
that's big. That's awesome.
I landed a job at a corporate real estate company managing the digital marketing for Japan. I was good at the job, and I loved the company culture. I loved my colleagues, my coworkers, but I kind of became disillusioned, one, with the work itself. I think I've become more and more purpose-oriented in terms of how do I contribute to society and help others.
Do you think that's a millennial thing?
Oh, for sure. I noticed that more among people in our generation than the older generation. It might just be maybe I'm not having those conversations, but it seems to be a common thread among us, which I think both has its pros and cons, because I think we can be a little bit too idealistic about it and pursue what we want to do and neglect sometimes what we have to do. We do live in a society where you have to work to make money and you provide for your family, and sometimes we would neglect that or delay those things, and I think that is necessary up to a degree, but I find some people are a little bit too obsessed with, like, what is my purpose, and what do I need to do, and they may never actually have an answer, and so that discrepancy between what they want and what they have can create unhappiness. And so I don't know if I'm doing justice to this, but there's a balance, I think, of being pragmatic and being idealistic, and some people in our generation, I feel like there's a gap. Whether that's because economically, like the reality is not as there's not as many opportunities as we would want to have to pursue those things, or it's because we have an overinflated sense of idealism that's just like disconnected from reality.
Interesting. So at a certain point at this corporate real estate job, you realized this is not my life's work, and then there was actually a point, a very specific point. I think I've told you about this, which was two things happened at the same time. One was I had received my annual bonus, which is a very corporate thing, right? Once or twice a year you get a bonus. I received the biggest bonus of my life. I was like, wow, this is more than twice than what I had my best hope was. And on top, at the same time, there was conversation about me moving into a regional position. So I was basically just managing Japan, but there was opportunities for me to take more responsibility of things in Korea and Greater China, and that was my goal coming into Japan in terms of corporate jobs is to work in Japan but work regionally or globally, and those two things were they happened. I made more money than I had ever made in my life, and there was this opportunity for me to get that regional promotion role. And yet that was that unhappiest moment in my corporate career in Japan. Interesting.
That period was like, why is there such a huge gap between me achieving what I had set out to do, and like my sense of fulfillment and happiness, and it led me to I mean, I was already involved with SOGO for a few years, so obviously there was already this momentum of me being involved in the sort of fitness industry, wellness industry, and I knew that was becoming more and more important to me. And maybe because the amount of joy and fulfillment I was getting from that compared to the lack of fulfillment in some ways at work caused me to just really feel disappointed. And so I decided to quit. Luckily, though, I had basically proposed to my boss and my team, I could give you 2 months notice. And 1 month is sort of the etiquette. Like you should give at least 1 month's notice. So I was like, I can give you 2 months notice, or I can work 3 days a week. For as long as you'll want me to
keep me here.
Until you find a replacement. Or if maybe that's a sustainable arrangement. And so they were happy with the plan B, that arrangement. And so I was able to actually continue doing that for about 5 or 6 months. Of 3 days a week. And so I had bought myself the time to figure out what I wanted to do. The next step. And I did nothing. I was like, I look back on that time, those 5 months.
I remember.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, what did I accomplish with these extra 2 days? I can't trace anything. I probably played like some video games and watched more videos and like, worked out more. I can't really trace any accomplishments or any revelations to that period. And then December 31st, 2017, first day of 2018, I am jobless. And so, from that point on, I just see my bank account shrinking every day. And I find out that I now have to pay the national taxes that were previously part of my salary. So I never really thought about them. So I'm like, okay, it's not just my living expenses, it's also the taxes I have to pay. And so just my bank account was going like this. And basically over the course of the next 2 years, I went broke. I went in debt.
How long were you in the window? I don't remember actually. It must have been like a year.
Yeah, so I started...
This is like December 2017. It went until like
November. So we started CoFit. It launched, I think it was around end of May. And our first gig was probably June. With Asics. And so prior to that, I didn't really have any income at all, except for these side like internet projects I had from like 10 years ago. And so it was pretty stressful. But I still had enough to keep going, to still be a little bit adventurous. And we CoFit was really exciting. It was exactly what I had wanted to do. I just didn't know what it was when I had left the job. It manifested.
You were going to go back to Leo 2 years ago when you left the corporate real estate job. Would you have done anything differently?
No, I don't think so.
Amazing.
I'm not the type. I've been pretty lucky. I'm still healthy. I never had any sort of life-changing injuries or things that
illnesses or anything like that.
So I'm still, up to this point, I don't look back at anything and regret it, because I wouldn't be where I am and who I am.
No, perfect. I love it. I love it.
That might change if there's a car accident that I can trace to some action, and then I just regret having, the series of events that led to that, or something like that, maybe. But I don't
always worked out.
Like nothing.
It's
in
always
my life.
worked out. No, amazing.
Because I don't know who I would be if I didn't have all those moments of like shame and embarrassment and failure. Right? Would I be as confident or resilient or as like adaptable as I am now? Maybe I could be more, maybe I could be less. I have no idea. So I'll just say I'm pretty good where I am now, and where I think I'll be in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Brilliant. So no regrets.
Brilliant. So
plus, if I had to add,
and
we've talked about this a lot, was I think we need, as humans, we need to experience really low lows to appreciate the highs. And
totally
there's a lot of quotes from all kinds of intellectuals and people far wiser than me, but like I'd never appreciated those pieces of wisdom until I had experienced it after. So
in the low it sucks, basically.
In the low,
and then when you come out of it
back,
you're like, oh, it was because of that low that I was able to whatever.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
you know, you need the low to determine what is important and what you should
Exactly.
focus on.
Exactly.
Because when things are going well, and you've noticed this probably me with
Exactly.
more than most people, which
Yeah.
is in my highs,
Yeah.
I'm going in like 50 directions.
Yeah.
I'm organizing this event on Monday, and
Yeah.
then this event which is unrelated on Tuesday,
Yeah.
and then working on this project, and like there's so many things, and all of them have so much potential. Even
Yeah.
like all the projects I work on, I do because I feel passionate about it and
Yeah.
feel like there's so much potential. And then you burn out because all of those things require dozens, hundreds, or thousands of hours, and you can't scale that.
Yeah.
Eclectic
Yeah.
way of approaching things.
Yeah.
So you need to have this low to really strip away all the things that are fun to do.
All the non-essentials.
Yeah.
basically. You know, 100%.
What do you really need to do
Exactly.
to get to that next stage, like to survive
Yes.
or to thrive,
Yes.
or to find your purpose? Like all
Yes.
those things, it required that, and so I look back upon probably one of the lowest points of my life, which was around 2018, 19.
Watching
As
the bank
one of the most,
deplete.
honestly, like, that was one of the biggest indicators. It's like bank account going into the negative, and like having to take out money, and those kinds of things as a completely necessary thing to reach the stage that I am at now. And to realize where I want to focus. I'm actually currently at a stage where I'm expanding again. So I think there will have to be more lows.
It's coming.
I mean, I'm always going up and down.
Yeah.
So it's coming, but I cherish it. It was invaluable.
Yeah.
And I hope that those who experience the lows can also, experience the highs.
Yeah.
I'm not naive enough to say that that's going to be the case for everyone. So I
Yeah.
actually don't recommend people make the same kind of naive decisions that I have. I'm lucky. I have a survivor bias, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was an important experience.
Yeah. I'm the exact same. Without my full story, I've gone through the exact same. Don't have a job. What am I gonna do? And then, oh my god, this is amazing. And then, same thing again. Like I've gone through the exact same.
And I look forward to I look forward to the future ones. I don't know what's coming.
Same.
There's gonna be more of that.
Same. I'm the exact same way. So, you're in your low, and then you wind up where you are now. How does that happen?
Honestly, I feel like my whole life was leading up to this.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. If I really look back on it, like the projects I was working on in university, the hobbies I had when I was in high school, like I can kind of all trace it to this. But there was a friend who forwarded a job description to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, this looks like it would fit you really well.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it, I was like, oh my god, this is exactly what I'd love to do.
Yeah.
And so I applied, and it took 10 months of interviews, but I was able to get this job in corporate wellness. And let me see, if I had to like pinpoint a single trigger event that like led to this position, it would be that in the most simple answer. But everything I've been doing has been leading up to this.
Yeah.
Like me quitting my job, SOGO stuff that we've been doing on the side, all the co-fit, the freelancing, all the
Asics influencing,
traveling I've done, everything has led up to it, and I can't really distinguish those. Like they're all part of the same story.
Yeah.
There's a pretty famous quote that Steve Jobs gave. I think it was at the Harvard address.
His address, yeah. His commencement speech.
The commencement speech, where he says you can't trace the dots looking forward. You can only trace
backwards.
Correct. You can only trace them looking back.
Correct. You can't connect them looking.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. Yeah. And that was totally what happened. Like how I see it.
Yeah. What do you like most about the fitness industry?
I mean, really simply, it's one of those jobs where you get to help people.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's one of the easiest way to feel fulfilled in life is to give to others, to help them, and then see that progress.
Yeah.
Whether that's raising your kids or teaching someone in a classroom. There's a lot of the complex stuff, the administrative stuff that happens as well with any job, but at the end of the day, you're able to help someone and see the impact that you're able to provide for them.
Yeah.
And fitness is something that people want and appreciate.
Yeah.
And so when they seek help, even if they don't seek help, they appreciate the sort of the benefit of that knowledge or the skill that's being transferred. So it's really easy, I think, to connect what you do with a sense of fulfillment and happiness relative to other jobs
in this
right?
industry.
In the health and fitness industry compared to, something in infrastructure. You're building something, and you might be able to appreciate that people will benefit from this building.
Yeah.
But it's like layers disconnected.
Yeah.
Whereas this has a human to human element to it that I think we're social creatures at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's really fulfilling.
Yeah.
In a simply in like the most natural way that humans are, which is again the social direct interaction.
And then on the flip side, what do you think you dislike most about the industry?
So I'm gonna answer this kind of in a different way, which is that I think there's too much emphasis on innovation. What I mean by that is, like, this is the new method that has been scientifically proven to help you achieve this goal with health and wellness, or this thing that was invented, or this drink or this concoction. There's too much of a search for a new answer. And I think, and it makes sense. We're in a capitalist society. You have to produce things. You have to create innovative products to capture market share. So we're driven to those things as producers or as service providers. But it oftentimes some of them are wacky, like they're not grounded in science. Some of them are a little bit more on the marketing side, like overinflating the potential results. And some of them are creating demand, right? By saying you should look like this, or you need to feel like this in order to be happy. But maybe they were already happy. Like they didn't actually, you've inflated their sense of need and created a discrepancy which they then need to buy or buy something in order to meet that. And it's unsustainable because we have a natural equilibrium, generally speaking. And always having an overinflated sense of desire or what you want to accomplish. It's unsustainable.
I completely agree.
So that's one part of it. And what I found really, this is something this ties back to my earlier answer about appreciating what Japaneseness is, or like appreciating what it means to be Japanese, or what the culture offers. But there's something I've like really learned to appreciate, I think, because I've been living in Japan for the last 6 years, and I may not necessarily have it if I had just stayed in Canada, which is there are these solutions that are coming. I would attribute a lot of it to the States, because a lot of the innovation is coming from there, which are like low carb this, or basically like scientifically driven solutions, and a lot of them have a lot of wisdom within them. But it's a constantly changing answer. And
I completely agree.
So it's like, okay, this is the best solution, but this newest discovery makes it so that you got to tweak it a little bit, or completely flips the entire thing. And it's constant. You're constantly disrupting.
Keto, whatever, and it just keeps happening.
That's
I completely agree.
Beyond fitness. It's just kind of the capitalistic sort of innovation, disruption-driven culture. And it does produce some amazing discoveries and amazing things, but oftentimes it comes at the result of like almost like chaos. It's like things get disrupted, but what are the after effects? What is the effect of this upon this upon society over time? So there's what I realized in Japan is there are some things that are grounded in nature and society that we've simply but when I say we, I mean in the Japanese people and Japanese society and culture have just embedded in the lifestyle over hundreds and thousands of years, and it works. And so
agree.
It's so I'll give you I'll try to give you like an old example and a new example of this. So an old example is the culture of onsens. Right. So it's there are other countries where they have public baths, but Japan is probably the number one public bath country in the world, right? So people after work, when they're super stressed, they go into an onsen, which is a public bath, and you just sit there.
Right? There's a bath culture, not even just onsen. There's a bathing culture.
Exactly.
Like everyone in their homes, they do this anyways.
And that's rooted in centuries of history.
Yeah.
And why do people do that? It's because it actually reduces your cortisol levels, right? You feel less stress. You can kind of disconnect from, especially now, you disconnect entirely from technology. You can't bring your watch in, you can't bring your phone in. You may not even have a clock. You don't have a sense of time. So you're really just in this kind of stillness, and it's sensory because you're feeling the heat on your skin, the humidity. It's engulfing in a very present way, and it's just something people do. Right? There's so many things, behaviors and habits like that that are amazing on one's health and well-being. But like you don't. There's no company out there overseas that's like hard selling public baths. You just can't monetize. You can't commercialize that and sell it overseas as a thing, as a packaged thing, right? It's also embedded in the history and the culture and the daily habits and in the family habits. So there's so many things like that.
Specifically here in Japan.
Specifically here, I mean, there's a lot of that in probably Scandinavian culture and Chinese culture, and a lot. But like I'm most familiar with Japan, so I can only really speak to that. And the appreciation for nature, whether it's like flower arrangement or forest bathing, the sort of appreciation for food. What is the essence of this ingredient, rather than like what sauces can I throw into it to make it taste really good, right? Like there's just so many things that are just part of the lifestyle here. And even like Zen meditation, which is a huge part of mindfulness. It's just a thing.
You just stop and appreciate the moment.
It's not like everyone here meditates, but people have those moments of Zen more often here, whether they're when they're in the on the beach looking out into the ocean, or they're looking at a painting, or they're in a temple. They're more inclined to have these sort of Zen-ish moments. So there's that. And the one thing that I learned, I would say over the last couple of years, that I really came to appreciate is how you measure health. Like what is health? Right? This is going back to like Socrates, but like it's not about what the answer to health to be healthy is, but like what does it actually mean to be healthy? For example. So as an individual, it's you could say longevity is one way to measure health, right? In the US, more than most countries, it's like there's a particular look. Is healthy. It's not to say that's what the whole industry is after, but there's a huge driver of that. And it could also be how you feel, and it can also so there's an individual level to health, but then you can actually go beyond that. For you to be healthy, you also usually, unless you're a complete like narcissist, health also should span those around you. Right? For you to be healthy, your children also, you need to know your children are healthy. You're able to provide safety and care for them, and your loved ones. So there's a collective sense of health, and I think that's what SOGO does. There's a collective elements of health. There's a societal element of health, and then at the largest level these days is sustainability. Right? How do we maintain healthy as a species, and ensure our longevity? So there's multiple levels of health, and in Japan, it's so much about collective health. Compared to the individual health, at the detriment of individual health oftentimes. So it's really interesting. So we do things like public bathing for individual health for sure, but oftentimes like our stressors from like work culture and sort of holding in your frustrations and not expressing them as publicly for the benefit of the collective health of society. There's like this interplay. And what I find, so this is like all over the place, but what the point I would want to make about Japan, and specifically Tokyo, is it's probably one of the healthiest places in the world, on average. So I think the US and Western countries produce some of the healthiest people in the world, but there's this disparity of like really high prevalence of diseases like obesity, and cancer, and Japan has much lower rates of those sort of first world diseases, and has arguably, I think, the longest
it's blue zone.
Exactly, it's a blue zone society. And so why is that? Why is it that where the health and fitness innovations come from actually has potentially on average a much unhealthier population, but has the healthiest people, like the small subset of the healthiest people, versus a society where you don't really have like huge fitness buffs, you don't really have a huge percentage. I mean, obesity is on the rise, there are epidemics, but it's not nearly to the scale of Western societies. But the average is like really high. People don't necessarily look like that here. They just look like they're average people who don't really exercise necessarily. They're just kind of living their life, right? Or maybe they're like more blue collar workers. It's just the common look. But the thing that I realized about the lifestyle here is people do the same moderate activities every day for their whole life. Right? There's a blue zone thing. But I think Tokyo has it kind of figured. It is. But people trace that more to like Okinawa, right?
Like Ikigai in particular. The blue zone thing. For sure. The blue zone, like Ikigai, I think Okinawa is that part of the blue zone. It's like there's I think somewhere in Greece.
But I would actually argue the example of Tokyo is actually more important because the example of Okinawa is not relevant to the majority of the population which lives in cities now. Right? So what is the city life that produces the highest average health in the world? And Tokyo is the largest city, and yet it has a very high level of health in terms of safety, which is a part of health, in terms of disease prevalence, which is again part of health, and longevity. Those are like really important measures. And if you look at the average Tokyoite, I'm gonna give you a random example here to kind of feed into this, but what I find really funny when my friends come to Tokyo, every single one of them, probably your friends also say the same thing, is like, my feet hurt. Because I'm walking all the time, right? It is a city of walking. Japan's famous for automobiles, and the city is famous for transit.
And yet there's tons of walking.
And yet, like, it is actually fundamentally a walking city. Right? I think, Amsterdam, Netherlands is famous for biking. Suburban culture, places like the big geographic countries like US, Canada, and Australia, they're more driving. But here it's actually the walking. Right? And what I find really, really interesting is maybe it's like the FDA or the health department in the US. They publish these guidance things. It's like
30 minutes a day.
30 minutes of moderate activity a day. Go for a walk.
Right?
So
you tons of that here.
It's funny because if you showed that to someone who is a farmer, for example, they'd laugh at you. They're like, well, obviously,
of course,
I'm doing this.
I walk for like 5 hours a day.
Times 10 every day. But for the average city person in North America, that's actually like solid guidance. Like, they need to walk more because they're just walking to the garage.
To get in the car.
And then they walk out of the car to wherever they're going, and then like minimally walking or sitting most of the time. So you need to walk more. But here, you inevitably walk more. There's almost no way you can't walk 30 minutes a day if you have a sort of typical job. Because you have to walk to the station, which in itself might be 20 minutes. Then you're standing in the train, and then you walk another 20 minutes or 15 minutes, and then you're just walking to the stores. Like, you don't drive anywhere. So it's built into the lifestyle, which is regular, moderate activity every single day.
which I love, and this is something I haven't talked about with anyone else. It's good you brought this up. That's one of the topics I'm going to dive into in a later video is actually going to be about, in terms of like, why are Japanese people so healthy? There are many different components, and one of them you didn't mention, we didn't talk about, we don't necessarily have to, but it's like mental health. And that's actually something that I think is worth exploring, because I don't actually know that, we don't do that now, but that's a component of health, and I don't know where Tokyo ranks on that side, or like where Japan ranks in general on that side. I don't necessarily think it's top in the world. I don't know that it's lowest in the world. I don't know where it sits in the, and I have no idea where America sits on that either. It's probably, it's massively subjective.
Hard to measure.
It's massively subjective.
Really
it's massively subjective. So
relative
it's hard
to like the physical metrics.
Correct. Like how long you live or rates of heart disease. But like moderation is a very, very Japanese thing, and I think Americans, like I am American, I think we look at the word moderation and we're like, I don't want to be average.
Americans are after, if I had to generalize, I've been doing this the entire conversation, but there's like the pursuit of performance.
Correct.
Which is above a sustainable...
Want to be like elite or
advanced.
If
I'm going to do it, there has to be I have to excel at it.
Correct.
And
that's a very American thing, and in Japan, I actually think there's this general understanding that like all things in moderation is okay. I think that's a great thing, actually. So
There's pros and cons to both, for sure.
No, of course.
The mental health part of it, you could also argue that pursuit of moderation or consistency results in people being unable to express themselves.
Correct. They
which
just
results in
stagnate.
mental health issues. There's a
Exactly.
lot of that as well.
Exactly.
But what's really interesting part of that whole conversation is when you allow, when a culture results in people pursuing performance in the sense of like, you have to look this like six pack, you have to have this 6-pack look, or you have to be able to run a certain pace. That will drive the people that have affinity to that to great extents. Like honestly, it's that's where you have the best universities and you have
Nike,
the best innovations and that like biggest companies and all of that stems from that. But that alienates people who feel like that's not like, why would I even pursue it if it's why would I even attempt to pursue something that I have zero chance of achieving? So when you are surrounded by and this goes into the sort of happiness index type thing, but when you're surrounded by people who are you can't relate to because they're so far ahead or it requires so much effort or some unique circumstance, then there could be a sort of opposite reaction where they're like, well, I'm not even gonna try because like I'm not gonna look like that. So what's the point? That I can see that being an element of why you have some people who have like completely almost abstained from trying to be healthy as well, causing that disparity. And it's almost it's like it's a matter. This is the whole sort of communal culture versus individualistic culture, but it's also a choice for them. It's like I have to choose to go to the gym and work out and follow this regimen. Whereas here, it's like it's not as much of a choice. It just is. You just walk. It just is. Every day is part of your life. That's how I did it with my parents, and that's how I'm going to do it when I'm 80 years old. And because the city's built that way, and that's just how people live. And it is just big generalizations, but there's very different approaches, very different philosophies, very different designs of cities and things that will feed into the results that you see.
I think the word that you said that I'm just stuck with, and I agree with it completely, is that I think there is really merit in moderation, and it's not an American characteristic. Moderation is not a word that is to do with America at all. I think nothing about that word in America go hand in hand, but culturally. But I think it's very common in Japan. I think that's one of the reasons that there's, especially for people like us, or for myself in particular, can come from a country like the States where it's always like bigger, better, faster, stronger all the time in all regards, and come to a place like Japan where I realize I actually don't necessarily have to constantly strive to be bigger, better, faster, stronger all the time to live a very happy, fulfilling, joyful life. You can find joy or happiness or satisfaction really anywhere on that spectrum, as long as as long as whatever you're doing, however you spend your days, aligns with your values, whatever those are for you. And I think that's really nice about this country. Whereas I feel much, when I speak to friends back home, there's much more an element of like, I don't say the rat race, but kind of like the rat race. Like everyone's like working very hard for the next thing. And that's why America in many ways it excels in the way that it does. But there isn't a lot of room for stopping and smelling roses kind of thing.
I'll give you another sort of perspective that, as you were talking, I thought of, which is if you were to try to like, what is the ideal healthy person in the US? Like if you ask people maybe in the 90s, they would have said like Schwarzenegger, right? Right? Or, like I don't know what now, it might be some athlete or someone. Anyways, it's like a performance related.
Correct.
And the reality is that it is unsustainable. It's not actually Schwarzenegger. He achieved it, and he's still really fit for his age. But there's if I had to create like a profile of what Americans on average, as sort of like the generalization they want to achieve, even as a fitness industry, it's like the varsity athlete. Like what they look like, what they represent, right? Which is like peak performance in your like 20s. you just like the look of perfection.
Yeah,
basically.
whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is hugely. I mean, we talked about the America being a cultural hegemony.
Yeah.
And how that plays into everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
But if you take that, I agree completely with that. If you take that and you think about Japan, what do you think is?
Yeah. Who is the healthiest?
What is the healthiest? What is in
exactly.
Japan? What is healthy?
I'm gonna try asking you. Like, what represents a healthy? What would you say is the iconic healthy person in Japan?
I think it's totally different.
Yeah.
I actually think, and that's one I've talked about this. I think one of the things I love about Japan is being healthy doesn't mean like having a six-pack, or doesn't mean like eating perfectly or being vegan or any of those things. I think being healthy in Japan stems back to like doing things in moderation.
Yeah.
So like walking a bit, even if you drink, that's okay, but drink reasonably in moderation. Like you can eat your ramen, you can eat your meat, but also like the people tend to eat whole foods. People tend to do things like bath, again, reducing cortisol levels, take long baths, reducing cortisol levels, kind of trying to minimize stress. So I think healthy in Japan is, if I were to describe a body, it would be, it would not be six-pack abs athlete. No, not that at all. It would be probably a like mid 30-year-old. I've been here so long. I'm saying this doesn't help, but like a really normal-looking person. Like, I don't know, not somebody who goes to the gym 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And, like that's healthy.
They go for a jog maybe.
They maybe go jogging like once a week, and they have a dog that they walk or something like that. That's, for me, that would be.
Yeah,
Japanese
I would say that's and a lot
and
of
I
people
like
pursue that. It's like, you know, they see someone who goes to the gym and the effort that goes into it and how disruptive it is in their schedule, and they're like, I don't need to do that. Like, but I would actually give you a slightly different answer. It's very much in line with what you said.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example and an answer. So the example I'll give, because this is very relevant just to the last 2 months, which is the current Prime Minister of Japan.
Okay.
So
it's kind of a definition of healthy.
In a funny way. I don't think this is actually the true answer. I'm just giving a funny answer.
Okay.
Which is, so he, I think he's in his 70s. He's definitely an older gentleman.
Okay.
But when I was reading about him in the news, because obviously it's a big issue in the country, a lot of articles were profiling his history, which included things like his father was a strawberry farmer, his mother was a teacher, he was from the countryside, etc. But one of the things they kept bringing up is he walks for 40 minutes every day. Yeah. And he does 100 sit-ups every single day. Yeah, and he's probably been doing it for decades, like every single day. Yeah. And he eats pancakes. Like this is his like whole profile. Everyone knows.
Thing I heard about.
Yeah, exactly. I actually went there like 2 weeks
You were the one who told me. You were the one who told me. I was really busy and you didn't know I was busy.
It's part of the whole story. But I was overjoyed to see that information be such a like big part of his profile. Yeah. Because he's this very successful, very intelligent, I mean, politics aside, healthy, as far as I can tell, for his age, guy who just seems to just chug on through every day of work. He's just like, he's one of those diligent, no-nonsense worker type guys. And, you know, what has led to that? And you could probably look at what he's been doing every day. You said like the average Japanese person doesn't pursue six-pack abs. I don't know. He might actually have like ripped six-pack abs behind that boxy suit he wears because he's doing 100 sit-ups every day. But that's the Prime Minister. And that was a story that everyone's been reading. And I feel like that's so representative of what I think most people would consider to be the healthy life in Japan, which is to be old and doing the same thing, being able to do the same thing consistently into your 80s and 90s and 100s, right? Like you're still farming at 80, you're still going for a hike every Sunday at 90, like that. For me, that when I think of like what is Japan, what is the kind of lifestyle that they could export? These are the things you need to do to be able to be a 90-year-old. Correct. Who's still
sustainability.
Still healthy. So it's actually, I wouldn't actually say it's the 30-year-old or even the 40-year-old. We also have the oldest population in the world here, so it's probably the healthy, consistent old person. Which I think it's more true than not, but there's still disease in old age.
Of course,
there are people who are infirmed, and so you know, we're still Japanese are just as human as anyone else. But as a lifestyle that leads to a certain result, there's probably so much wisdom there if you want to achieve that, rather than thinking of health as a this week or this month or this year type result. It's actually health is over the course of 90 years,
decades.
Like, so yeah, you could pursue something that makes you healthy this year, but it might actually be at the detriment of your health in terms of your 90-year lifespan.
Yeah, that the term there is health span.
Yeah.
So you have lifespan is how long you actually stay alive, and then health span is like how long you are actually healthy into old age.
Yeah.
And Japan has, I think, a remarkably high health span.
Yeah.
And people remain active, like you said, hiking when they're 70, 80. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
In this country, and that's not something that's common, for sure, in the States, and I don't know what it's like in Canada, but
Yeah.
it seems like it's something that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
At least in some ways to Japan.
You know, so I specifically think Japan is uniquely could be a big contributor to this, is because when you mentioned blue zones, like I said, it was like Okinawa was kind of given as the example of Japan.
Yeah.
And the other blue zones are also basically, they're not urban centers.
Yeah.
Right? So
And blue zones, it's specifically referred to lifespan.
Yeah.
So just how long people live. Coincidence or not, those same areas also have very long health spans.
Yeah.
So people remain like very active, like farming and walking and all that stuff. So there's definitely a correlation to lifespan and health span in those, in particular in those areas, but I think across the board.
Yeah, across the whole country.
Yeah.
And they managed to achieve that in the urban landscape, which is what I'm trying to get at. Is basically, you could say there's this great example in Okinawa, but that's irrelevant to most people.
Yeah.
Because they cannot achieve that in a city framework. But Japan has been able to establish a really high baseline of health span in urban centers, in the biggest urban center in the world, where you typically associate with more of the Western sort of modern diseases,
ailments and all that.
Interesting. So in that sense, like, there's so much wisdom here, but it's not commercialized as well. It's not sold as well. I don't probably because it can't be. Like, you can't sell a lifestyle that is just part of your life anyways. It doesn't cost anything to do. Or it's built into the infrastructure, so you can't emulate that in other places so easily. But there's just so much here that I'm still discovering every day, and I've learned to appreciate more, both from a sort of health and fitness professional perspective, but also as a Japanese Canadian. And I love the fact that I have the Western perspective to appreciate what is here, because I feel like there is a need for that. I think we play a role in this, which is it's easy to neglect or like not appreciate something that just has been part of your life the entire time. It's not some new discovery you're teaching someone because you've just grown up with that. Right? So sometimes you need an outsider to really understand how that wisdom can be packaged and taught to those who don't have the benefit of having been raised here. And so there's just a lot of learning still to be done, but I think there will be more and more things coming from Japan. There have actually already been. In recent times, I would say that the biggest, most salient example would be the KonMari method. The sort of minimalism cleaning thing. That's actually very much like steeped in like Japanese philosophy, aestheticism, and the culture here. There is a lot of hoarding here as well. But there's also a lot of that minimalism mindset, appreciation of things. And like that's like a really interesting recent example. All of a sudden, like, everyone's obsessed with Japanese minimalism, and decluttering, and recently, Japanese aesthetic and interior design, Japanese cuisine. These are all part of well-being as well. Japanese infrastructure, architecture. But when it comes to the fitness realm, you don't really put Japan up there as a shining example of like pumping out new fitness innovations. Can you trace them?
And I love that. And so this is
because it's not, because it actually it doesn't. The world doesn't need more massive fitness innovations.
Correct.
It needs to go back to what's grounded
Correct.
in nature
And
and
that's-
physiology. And
That's
like,
why I love doing what it is I do, and that's the direction, like personally. So I haven't looked at this in the video, but that's actually what I aspire to do as a health coach, based on my experience in Japan. That's actually my, I think, potentially single greatest like export or asset, is to share that understanding of moderation, balance, like not aiming to achieve peak fitness, because that's just not, like, it's not something I'm about. I'm very much about like eating and living sustainably, and that could just mean like going on bike rides and walking and like going to the gym every once in a while, being reasonably mobile. And I with all my clients, it's very much something we focus on. It's not like I don't do like, you know, coaching for people who are going to be competing in a bodybuilding competition or any of that stuff. It's just, that's just wonderful, and like, there's a place for that, but it's not what I consider to be sustainable, and it's not what I consider to be of greatest value, but it's all relative. For somebody, that may be the thing that is of greatest value. Like to discredit Arnold and all his achievements because it wasn't sustainable, like that would be doing him and the industry a massive disservice. Like he had to be the person to do that, to, you know, to excel in a way that nobody had before, and to change the whole industry, and to change the face of what it is to be a movie star and an action star, action hero, and all that stuff. Like he was, played a huge role in all that, and so like his accomplishment has massive value. But would you look at him as a shining example of sustainability? Absolutely not. Like, not at all. but you kind of need all of that. So I think you need America to be America, because you need to know like what's the best, biggest, fastest, whatever thing, and like America's going to set that bar. But then at the same time, it's amazing that Japan is where it is, and I actually hope it doesn't change. Like I don't hope to make Japan more like America in terms of the fitness industry. Actually, I really like that Japan does it the way it does it. And then on the flip side, I actually hope to share with the world, specifically the States and like my kind of Kenyan culture diaspora, that moderation, balance, sustainability, increased health span, like that's where it's at. That's the real goal. So I love that. I'm in complete agreement with all of that.
There's, I agree with everything you said, and I've never been one of your coaching clients, so I didn't really know what your philosophy was going into it, but it's beautiful. Like
it's 100% sustainability. Yes, like I really believe that. Like it's something that as I get older, I'm able to practice better. It's like now being 33 versus 25. When I was 25, I wanted to be Arnold. But at some point, a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I started realizing like, it's not that important that I be in peak fitness, peak shape all the time. And especially now, I think now having kids, it's in part like being in a stable relationship, like not needing to show off anything, really being at peace with who I am. But then also working with people, many of whom are a little bit older or a lot older than I am, realizing, and like being good friends with Hide and seeing Hide as a person, realizing like this thing is long and it doesn't, like peak fitness, maximum, like being the best, top, whatever, like it's not that important. It's really just better to find fulfillment, find enjoyment in what you do daily, and then just do that forever. Like that's like, it's real simple.
With some variability, but like consistency is kind of the key to longevity.
Correct.
Moderate consistency.
Correct. So I love it. So as a coach, that's everything I talk about is focus on that. So consistency, just like sustainability is the goal for sure. So I love it, man. If you were gonna talk to somebody who is not in this industry at all, but maybe is interested in, to some degree, is interested in wellness, what's maybe one piece of advice you'd give to that person?
In general, if you want to learn from how I approached or how I succeeded in jumping across industries, which I've actually done twice, it would be that there are certain, I hope most people have, certain types of activities in their day-to-day life where they just naturally get into the zone, right? Where you kind of just get lost in time and you make time for it, right? Like, for example, I think maybe you've read some of these posts, but like, I'll have an idea and I'll start writing in the gym. and I'll be there for an hour writing on my phone, not working out. because I'm like enthralled by the process. And which means that actually the fitness was actually subservient to that activity. So for me, when I really look back, when am I most in flow, or I'm like not, the sense of time has kind of just disappeared? It's when I'm planning. It's when I'm like doing idea generation, and when I'm restructuring something to create a framework or a theory, and especially the development of new theories is something I always seem to get just like stuck in the process. I have tons of work that's like built up. I've got a million tasks, and yet I'll like be up till 2 a.m. writing about this theory that I have. So clearly there's something there. And so when I look at my sort of what within what I do in fitness or in work really like captures me, it's that planning and theorizing part of that. So I think we need to identify individually what are the activities that like where you have that experience the most. Because I know you shared a few times on your social media, it's like, do the thing you love,
and make all the late nights and all that work kind of thing.
I would go more, I would try to break it down even more further to like the essence of what is that kind of activity, what is the building blocks of that. Because you could say it's like fitness or the planning part of it. So
even if you just use fitness, it's different for some people. Some people love the planning, tracking part of it.
Some people love the feeling in the workout.
Correct.
Some people love the feeling after
exactly.
the workout.
I'm an after the workout person. Reese is an in the workout person for sure. And that's like again, I'm going to do an entire video on that, but that's a very interesting but important, I think, distinction.
So you need to identify that.
You have to know
you
that.
have to identify that. And then you have to try to do that more often, because I think that's something you would want to do for your own fulfillment and happiness. But the reality in the world is that you have to do something that is monetizable, right?
Correct.
So how do you make money from this thing that you love to do, or you kind of get sucked into doing naturally? And there's no answer to that. No, like I can't give you a single answer. You kind of have to keep doing it, and then hopefully there's like a spark at some point where you realize there's an overlap between a need in the economy or in
the market of some sort.
And what you
one
do.
Of your skill sets.
And like when you find that overlap, that's what probably you should pursue in terms of balancing making money with feeling fulfillment. And hopefully by that time you've also become very skilled and capable in that thing, because you've just been practicing it naturally through sheer interest alone, without having been paid for anything. And I think that's how I've approached entering the fitness and wellness industry. That's how I even went into digital marketing, because I studied marketing, conceptual advertising marketing, not the programming, like front-end development side of digital marketing, which is what I ended up doing. And that was because of this like website I made, Hack My Study, and similarly what I did at SOGO led to the corporate fitness and wellness space. So I guess in terms of more practical advice, kind of what you were saying, find the things that you love to do, that you kind of get enthralled in the process, keep doing it until, and hopefully you develop some proficiency. I would go so far as to say help others as much, like try to find a way to help others through that, right? Exactly. Teaching is probably the most common way. It could be creating and writing, and then giving it away, right? And I do a lot of that. I tend to just fall in love with something, and then I try to give as much as possible, which is what SOGO is. I would spend dozens of hours a week just leading events and stuff, or writing posts or creating policies, those kind of things, and then find that overlap. And sometimes it's not even where you're looking, right? How your base skill, for example, there are probably going to be people who hear this and say, well, I love to play video games. Right? Or like, I love watching YouTube videos. And so for us, it's like, it's clearly we can make money from this. It's much easier. But for someone who's maybe hasn't had as much time to put the thought into it, or can't really clearly see that overlap between how you can make money from your passion with video games or watching videos, right? You have to go even further deeper. Like, what is it? What genre of games and what genre of videos do you watch?
Yeah.
What is it about that? Right?
Yeah.
Is it the analyzing element of the interaction of people?
Yeah.
Is it like trying to predict what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And then the validation of that actually happening or not?
Yeah.
Is it just like you creating or you learning through through those interactions?
Yeah.
There's more fundamental motivations behind that. I think I hope from most people.
Yeah.
So once you can extract that,
Yeah.
then you can say, for example, I loved to play strategy RPGs. Why wasn't I playing racing games or why wasn't I playing like fighting games? It was like strategy RPG, like fantasy strategy RPGs. So clearly I'm more of the kind of strategy oriented long term, because you don't play RPGs because you get a hit right now. It takes it's like back in the day, like 100-hour game. So I'm more of like the planner type.
Yeah.
Even though I would say, like someone else, I like playing video games.
Yeah.
Right. And not just planning, but the kind of strategy and humanity and the nature of human nature, like those kind of concepts that kind of commonly pop up.
Yes.
And so, you have to try to find the essence of those things, even if they seem like completely unproductive, useless, like time-wasting activities. I hope that there is some element of some like more fundamental motivation that can be applied elsewhere.
Yes.
For those who are planner types, probably a kind of corporate or administrative type position is what you're more aligned with. Whereas if you're like a sort of relationship building type or sort of the commanding type, then you're probably better off in the sort of instructor coaching realm of fitness. And then if you're like the really high energy, elevate everyone's sense of like sensual joy, it's probably more like an influencer type is more appropriate. So there's a lot. There's you can be like an engineer type. I think I'm closer to that. And still find a very like appropriate role within fitness or any industry. And probably we need more of that. We need people who are not naturally inclined to a particular industry.
Correct.
And yet somehow get into that industry. They can bring,
because the fitness industry actually draws the like
sensual,
bubbly, bright, sensual people, but it would benefit equally from people who are more focused on structure
So even if you're not a fitness, even if you don't feel like you fit the profile of a fitness person, or whatever industry you're pursuing, there might actually be a very significant role, and that's actually been sort of the story of modern sort of modern corporate jobs almost. It's like bringing engineers into finance related roles, or bringing someone who's a philosopher into economics, that kind of thing. Those are where some of the most amazing stuff comes from. So don't discount yourself just because you don't fit the existing profiles. Because if you do fit the existing profiles, you're competing against everyone, first of all. So the likelihood of differentiating is the hurdles are much higher. And maybe the industry needs you, and maybe it needs some disruption in that sense. Look for those.
Love it. Thank you for joining me. I never know what direction these conversations are going to go in, but it very quickly took the kind of turn that I love, like the kind of it turned into the kind of conversation I love having with you. And so, guys, I hope you learned quite a lot. And if you have questions or you'd like to get in touch with myself or Leo, you can drop it in the comments. You can find us on Facebook. You can find him through Attack My Study website. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe, hit the notifications button, and give this video a thumbs up. So I know you guys want to see more of these kinds of videos. And Leo, I can't thank you enough for, again, participating. And Emily, shout out quickly. Thank you for the Tokyo light. This thing is amazing. I don't know if the positioning works really well. I think it's actually potentially too bright, but we'll find out later on when you guys comment and say, it's too bright. So let me know how you guys like this. We're actually planning on turning this into a kind of studio area by elevating this and making it look a little nicer. But Thank you guys for watching. Leo, thank you for joining me. This is awesome. And see you guys next time.